of Success Mantra and other programs. Today we have a very special program called Sacred Spotlight, where we get celebrities from different walks of life to share their life with us. Incidentally, we have a very amazing person with us from the profession of law. He has been practicing in the Supreme Court, and he has been instrumental in the history of India in many ways. So let's understand how behind the scenes he has been working with all the leaders of India. Welcome Mr. Anoop Bose, who is a celebrated lawyer and of course has taken time out for this interaction with us. I'm really delighted to welcome you to Sacred Spotlight.
Thank you very much, Sonali. I am very happy that we are meeting today and you have decided to interview me. Firstly, I would like to say I'm not a celebrity, nor do I claim to be one. Yes, it is true that I have known over the years many celebrities. And I was born in Calcutta way back on the 29th of August, 1954. Tomorrow I'll be celebrating my 71st birthday in Delhi.
Wonderful.
And around the age of 3, I shifted to Delhi. And even before I reached 4 years of age, I joined Delhi Public School, my alma mater, way back in the year 1958, when I was not even 4 years old. But in those days, I declared my birthday to be the 4th of January 1954 because I joined Delhi Public School on the 4th of January 1958. After Delhi Public School, of course, in school, I got a very good foundation because we had excellent teachers, and Delhi Public School has spread all over India. In fact, it had also branches in other parts of the world. And around the time I joined Delhi Public School, my parents engaged an old English lady who used to stay very close to my house, who belonged to the 19th century. Her name was Margaret Rose Anderson, and I used to affectionately call her Granny. And from the age of 3, she taught me to speak, write, and read English. And she brought about a sense of perfection in the sense she used to hit the knuckles of my fingers with a hard wooden ruler. And she believed, and she brought me up like an English boy of the 19th century. So she gave me a tremendous foundation in the English language. But then gradually, as I progressed in school, my parents realized that I was weak in Hindi. So they kept a Hindi Pandit from Allahabad, you see, who was otherwise a postmaster in the Ashok Hotel in Delhi, but he was a Hindi scholar. And within the next 1 or 2 years, I started topping in Hindi as well, you see.
Wow.
Though ultimately, of course, I topped in Hindi from school, and I missed out. We have something called the Marker Cup, you see, which is given to the student who is the best in a certain subject. So I got the Marker Cup for debating at the end of my school days. And the English Marker Cup went to my class friend Salman Khurshid, who ultimately went on to become the Union Minister of External Affairs. And I got the Marker Cup for Hindi, you see, interestingly. Then from school, I went to Hindu College, which has now been declared by the Ministry of Education as the topmost college in India. And I did my economics honors from Hindu College. And in those days, Hindu was not known for the best of students in economics honors. So in the year I passed out, I was the only first class in economics from Hindu College. St. Stephen's College, I think, had 19 first classes, and Lady Shriram College, I think, had about 4 or 5. So I was the only first class holder in economics honors from Hindu College. And around class 9 or class 10, I started off with Yuvani, and then I was broadcasting regularly for Delhi B, and then I went on to the General Overseas Service, and then Doordarshan. And interestingly, the son of the Director General of the General Overseas Service was also in my school. and the daughter of the director of Doordarshan, Director General of Doordarshan, Mr. Chavda, his daughter was with us in school. And then we had the Director General of the Delhi station, Mr. U.L. Barua, whose son was also in my school. And then fortunately around the year 1967-68, I came in touch with Indira Gandhi. And one of the first things I told her was that I was a great fan of her father, Pandit Nehru, and that I knew most of his speeches by heart, you see.
Wow.
And then when I told her this, she told her private secretary, Mr. Dhawan, to call me another day when she wanted to listen. And I said, I know a couple of your father's speeches by heart. And Pandit Nehru was my childhood ideal. And in fact, I sort of venerated him. And naturally, when I met her to sort of demonstrate my mimicry of Pandit Nehru, I started off with the, Tryst with Destiny speech, which is very popular and which was the speech which Nehru gave at the stroke of midnight hour. I can only give you a taste of it. Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge, not wholly and in full measure, but very substantially. At the stroke of midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India shall awake to life and freedom. She interrupted me and she said, well, this speech everyone knows. But she says, the speech which is my favorite is the speech which Pandit Nehru delivered on 15th of August over All India Radio. And when I used to broadcast, I used to use the same, the microphone which used to be used during Nehru's time, Ampex microphone, which had come during wartime. And I'll give you a taste of that, you see, and my memory is still good. I remember all these. So then I started doing the speech which was her favorite, and that is, fellow countrymen, it has been my privilege to serve India and the cause of India's freedom for many years. Today, I address you for the first time officially as the first servant of the Indian people, pledged to their service and their betterment. I am here because you willed it so, and I remain here till you choose to honor me with your confidence. We are a free and sovereign people today, and we have rid ourselves of the burden of the past. We look at the world with clear and friendly eyes, and at the future with faith and confidence. The burden of foreign domination is done with, but freedom brings its own responsibilities, which must be shouldered in the spirit of a free people, self-disciplined and determined to preserve and enlarge that freedom. We have achieved much. We have much more to achieve. Let us then address ourselves to our new tasks with the adherence to high principles which our great leader has taught us. Mahatma Gandhi is fortunately with us to guide and inspire and ever point out to us the path of high endeavor. He taught us long ago that ideals and objectives can never be divorced from the methods adopted to realize them, that worthy ends can only be achieved through worthy means. When we think of the big things of life, when we dream of India as a great nation giving an age-old message of peace and freedom to others, we have to be big ourselves and worthy children of Mother India. The eyes of the world are upon us, watching this birth of freedom in the East and wondering what it means. Our long subjugation and the World War and its aftermath have made us inherit an accumulation of vital problems. And today, our people lack food and clothing and other necessaries, and we are caught in a spiral of inflation and rising prices. We cannot solve these problems suddenly, and yet we cannot delay their solution. So we must plan wisely so that the burden on the masses may grow less and the standards of living go up. We wish ill to none, but let it be clearly understood that the interests of our long-suffering masses must come first, and every intense interest that comes in their way must yield to them. Jai Hind. At that point of time, after listening to my mimicry of Pandit Nehru, and in those days I had a lighter voice, so I sounded more like a father, and now I have a heavier and a more resonant voice.
You just sound like
She held me in her arms and she said, and I was only in class 9 in school, she said, "You're a little boy, but you have the personality of my father."
Right.
And the relationship grew over the years, and we used to write very often to each other, sometimes by hand. Even when I got married, she wrote to me saying, "I hope you found the ideal girl." And in one of her letters, she said, "How beautifully you write calligraphy as words. And in my most difficult days, your letters have given me great inspiration." Now, and she was one of the people who sort of, promoted me. And it was because of her recommendation that I found a place on Doordarshan. And sooner or later, at a very early age, I was reading the news. And then came the biggest, the bonanza. And during the emergency time, in 1975, a film was made by Doordarshan called Spirit of India, in which my voice and my music was used, and my script was used. And that film was sent to 200 countries, and it is still preserved, I believe, in the archives of Doordarshan. And it was a film which was launched on her birthday on the 19th of November 1975 over what was then the truncated national channel through INSAT-1 satellite, which was launched to coincide with Indiraji's birthday. And the INSAT-1 satellite only was beamed to cities like Calcutta, Bombay, Madras and Delhi. That was the national hookup in those days, you see. And then of course, I had a very close association. Yes, absolutely.
That, you have been in broadcasting,
Yes.
you wrote scripts, and your idol was Pandit Nehru. From there, how did you get into law and,
Yes, I will tell you that.
The entire journey started?
I will tell you that, you see. I think within an hour or so after I was born, you see, the leader of the Indian bar, you see, Mr. Ashok Sen, whom I used to call Ashok Mamu, came to see me after I was born. Okay. And the history of Ashok Sen, I can tell you that my mother's grandfather and Ashok Sen's grandfather, Ashok Mamu's grandfather, they bought a plot of land in Dhaka. Okay. And they built 2 houses side by side, and there was not even a wall separating the 2 houses. So he literally grew up in my grandfather's house, and my mother literally grew up in their house. And Ashok Sen to me was more than a father figure. And he was the leader of the Indian bar for over 60 years. He was the law minister in Nehru's cabinet. He was the law minister in Lal Bahadur Shastri's cabinet. And he was also the law minister in Rajiv Gandhi's cabinet, you see. And he was the person who could practice in any court on any subject. And he had the largest law library possibly in Asia. He used to subscribe to all the law journals. He had all the law reports. And one of the first things he told me after I joined his chambers, you see, and in fact, in those days, he didn't even allow me to go home. He used to say, "You sleep in the library," in that huge library, and there was a little cot which I used to sleep. In the morning, we used to go after breakfast to the court. Now, one of the first things he told me, never tell anyone that you have joined the chambers of Ashok Sen. He said, tell everyone that you have joined the stables of Ashok Sen, and I have whipped you to perfection. I made a lawyer out of you. And then, of course, sooner or later, my first client was ITC. Which is like the first girl in your life. The first client has a very emotional value. Right. The second client was Tata Steel, Rusi Modi to be specific. And the third client was Reliance, you see. And I came in very close touch with the ITC chairman, Mr. Haksa. He was the chairman when I started work with ITC. And the first case that came had something to do with the Maurya, which had come up by 1977. And Mr. Rusi Modi was quite a celebrity, since you talked about celebrities. He was a short man, but we had a great academic record, and he was the son of Sir Homi Modi, after whom a street is named in Bombay. And his brother was a very distinguished member of parliament who started the Swatantra party called Pilu Modi.
Right.
So it started off Tata Steel, and then Reliance. I came in touch with Dhirubhai Ambani, and he used to treat me like a member of the family, and I became a kind of legal advisor. And then I think he was possibly the greatest person I met in the corporate world. And then I've had, because of Tatas, I was a special advisor to Tata Consultancy Service over 12 years, and which is the flagship of the Tatas, as you know, having more than 94,
So were you
95.
still broadcasting at that point in time?
Yes,
You were
of course.
consulting with all
Of
these-
course, whenever sometimes, when I used to come to Delhi, I used to be, one of my mentors was a gentleman called Shiv Sharma, apart from Indira Gandhi and other. So Shiv Sharma was to start off, he was the director of the Delhi station of Doordarshan. When thanks to Indira Gandhi, I had the privilege, and I mentioned, where I lent my voice, and I was involved with this documentary on Indira Gandhi called Spirit of India, which, as I told you, was telecast on Insat 1 on a national level. You see, and so I continued to broadcast, and I continued to telecast, you see. And there were two programs in which I was doing weekly programs when I was involved with Doordarshan. After Kabir Bedi, I started doing Mirror of the World, which was a program which was made famous by the famous actor Kabir Bedi, who, as you know, had an English mother. And then I was doing a program called TV Folio, in which I had to interview various celebrities, like you do, ranging from, say, the Greek ambassador in those days, Basil Tsaxis, who was a doctorate in law, doctorate in philosophy, and a doctorate in music, to various other people, you see. And then many other people came into my life during that period. And I think Mrs. Gandhi's, of course, I was very close to her son, Rajiv Gandhi, and I used to work closely with him. And the last letter that Rajiv Gandhi wrote was to me. The letter was posted 2 hours before his death on the 21st of May, 1991. And it reached me after his death, of course. And that was the last letter that Rajiv Gandhi wrote, condoling my father's death, who had died some time back, you see. In between, I came in very close touch with the person who was then later on to become the Prime Minister of India, again a father figure, P.V. Narasimha Rao, who was introduced to me by Indira Gandhi. And when Indira Gandhi introduced him to me, she said that he's the only scholar in the Congress. And as luck would have it, in the year 1991, after Rajiv Bhai, I used to call him Rajiv Bhai's tragic assassination on the 21st of May 1991, he became the Congress president and then the Prime Minister of the country. And I was the only person who was not a member of his family who was staying with him in those initial days when he became the Prime Minister. So I had that good fortune of watching the father of economic reforms, sort of realizing his dreams, and the dreams which meant the realization meant the liberalization, the opening up of the economy, and also, I would say, fostering of very close economic ties with the United States of America. And the relationship continued, and I remember when Babri Masjid happened on the 6th of December, 1992. And he was the Prime Minister of the country, and then, it was a very tragic thing that happened. But he had nothing to do with what happened, actually. The Uttar Pradesh government was headed by a gentleman called Mulayam Singh. Yeah. But nevertheless, he was a Prime Minister, and he faced a lot of brickbats at that point of time. The Americans came to his help. The Americans gave him full support. In those days, I was very close to the American ambassador to India, Tom Pickering, and Mr. Clinton, who by then had become the President of the United States, also gave him the full support of Uncle Sam, you see. So he was able to tide over that crisis, and then later on there were many other crises that he went through, you see. the Jharkhand Murti Mocha matter, where I was appearing for the members of parliament who went right up to the Supreme Court. The present Chief Minister of Bihar's father, Shibu Soren, who was one of my clients, and Suraj Mandal and Saman Morandi. And I had to defend them, and we had defended them right up to the Supreme Court. And he used to also call me Pandit Nehru. And in fact, Vasant Sati recommended to Indira Gandhi that I should play the role of Nehru in the film Gandhi. But I think people felt that I was too young to play the role of Pandit Nehru, and they brought in Roshan Seth, you see. And I think Roshan Seth didn't do justice.
Have you acted in any film, as in, since you mentioned?
No. I've mostly, done documentaries and lend my voice and my music. When I talk of music, I must tell you, I have the largest collection of Western classical music in India.
Wow.
I have over 50,000 vinyl discs, you see, and I've got everything in terms of Western. But I have also a lot of Russian, German, French, Latin American music. And I was the music critic of the Telegraph for a long time. I started off when Mr. M. Jagba, the famous journalist, was the editor of the Telegraph. And I had the good fortune in the year 1984 to review Zubin Mehta's historic concert in Calcutta. And and I also interviewed Mr. Zubin Mehta, one of the great conductors of our time and one of my great favorites, and who actually, belonged to Bombay, is a Parsi from Bombay. But he came with the New York Philharmonic to Calcutta in 1984, and I reviewed. And
so do you also play?
No, I don't. I don't sing or play, but I have been a kind of musicologist because and then as the music critic of the Telegraph, I has to cover some of the important concerts, including, as I mentioned, and I has to write on various people like Johann Sebastian Bach and on. And as I mentioned, I have a huge private library, see, and I keep them like books in a lawyer's library. I probably have now more records than books because most of my library has been sold off, because nowadays we lawyers, we rely more on, everything is online, and books attract,
So tell me something that, you have been so close to P.V. Narasimha Rao, to, Indira Gandhi, and also admired Pandit Nehru. Then how come you didn't step into the political grounds?
You see, after 84, when I got married, my wife was definitely a dampening factor. She said, politics is not a place for honest people like you. And if you go to politics, you will not be able to make money. And they may ask you to do. And then when you fall from power, then people will not even recognize you. I've seen people like Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, and Uncle P.V. After they fell from power, people did not give them any importance at all. And I can tell you this, that after he died, Narasimha Rao, and that was on the 24th of December 2004 when he died, and I came down from Calcutta. Firstly, his body was not even allowed into the Congress office. And then I was one of the few people who went to put his body into the aircraft, you see. The immortal remains of Uncle, I was the last one to put his body into the aircraft. And I still remember there were only 4 people who are not family members who came to say farewell to his body. One was Pranabda, we used to affectionately call him Poltuda, who became the president of the country. Sheila Dixit was again extremely close to me, and she was like my own sister. The Lieutenant Governor of Delhi, Mr. Joshi, and myself, and members of Uncle's family. The man who brought about economic liberalization, the man who launched Manmohan Singh into power, ultimately was carried to Hyderabad and was given a very shoddy funeral, where I believe even his whole body was not burnt, you see, and what was not burned was just left in the crematorium, you see. Anyway, I did not get into that controversy, but he was treated very tardily. And even when he was suffering, he used to even tell me that even the Prime Minister didn't keep to see him, though. And the Sikhs is another chapter, what happened to the Sikhs. But then I'm very close to the Sikhs. I work very closely with the Sikhs all over the world, and in particular with the Sikhs in England, with the leader of the Sikhs in England, Bhai Sahib Mohinder Singh, who has a huge Gurdwara in Birmingham, the leader of the Sikhs in London, Amarjit Singh, with with my best friend in London is the most famous Indian member of parliament, Lord Rummy Ranger, who wrote a book called From Nothing to Everything, and who is the MP from Mayfair. He is Lord Rummy Ranger of Mayfair, you see. And he's the leader of the Punjabis in the United Kingdom. I've had the privilege of addressing the House of Lords, the House of Commons, and Chatham House on 5 occasions. And that was something for me which was a great privilege. And I still remember that after I gave a speech in the House of Lords, where I was given an award as the Ambassador of Peace by the senior most Indian Lord, Lord King, who is no more, and many other lords who are no more, like Lord Meghnad Desai died only 2 months ago.
Right.
And the British Prime Minister at that time, Mr. Gordon Brown, came up to me and said, "Sir, you should have been a member of our parliament." And I went dressed almost like Winston Churchill in my tailcoat and my top hat, and top hat from Mossbus, which is the oldest, hat company in the world, on St. James Street, London. I had a tailcoat from Mossbus, which supplies clothes to the royal family. I had a Burberry tie, and I had a wing-collared shirt, and the collars were from Horn Brothers in London, you see. So, and then when I was escorted out of the House of Lords after my first visit, the gentleman who escorted me out of the House of Lords said, "Sir, you brought back the glory of Winston Churchill." Winston Churchill, I've been a great fan of Winston Churchill, though his name is acerbic to many in India because of what happened. But as a great leader, as a person, of course, he was very fond of Pandit there. He was not fond of Gandhi. He was the only world leader who didn't attend Gandhi's funerals after Gandhi died. But he was very close to Nehru, and Nehru attended the Commonwealth Prime Minister's Conference in 1954 when Churchill hosted the conference, you see. But then Churchill was the only Prime Minister of England who got the Nobel Prize for Literature. And that was for those books that he wrote, those 6 books on the Second World War. You see, I have the original editions of most of Churchill's books, and some of them I picked up from these flea markets, like Churchill's War Speeches, 3 volumes, and I think 1,700 copies were printed. So I picked up 2 from Portobello Street in London, which is known for its antiques and old stuff, you see. And the third one there's a Sunday market in Cambridge University, opposite the Cambridge University Press, from where I picked up the 3rd volume of Winston Churchill's War Speeches. It's the original. And all with forwards by...
Also conversant with all the war speeches?
Yes, absolutely. I used to mimic Churchill, and I must tell you that Churchill and Nehru went to the same school, Harrow on the Hill, and were taught by the same teachers, except their journeys took a different turn. Nehru went on to Cambridge, to Trinity College, and then did his bar. You see, and then Churchill went to Sandhurst and went on to become a part of the British, and then at a later stage he became, the Lord of the Admiralty at a very early age, and he came from a very distinguished family. He came from the distinguished family. His mother, as you know, was American. His mother was from Brooklyn, New York. And in fact, when Churchill went for the first time to America, he went to America only for the first time during the Second World War. When he addressed the House of Congress, you see, he said, "Had my father been American and my mother British, I would have got here on my own," you see. And Churchill forged that great alliance between the United States and Great Britain, which he called the unwritten alliance, you see, an alliance far beyond treaties and protocols, where the 2 nations can walk in majesty and dignity in a kind of unwritten alliance, you see. And that helped Churchill during the war, you see, because the Americans came with the Lend-Lease Act and then there was the Atlantic Charter. And he had a great love for Pandit Nehru, also because of the Harrovian background, you see. That I used to imitate Churchill, you see, and if I were to start now sort of mimicking Churchill, but you see, let us therefore brace ourselves, for upon this battle depends the survival of Christian civilization, ... and men will still say this was their finest hour. And I must also tell you that I always endorse Churchill's speeches on communism. And one of the great speeches he made was in the context of the war that Finland fought against Russia, you see, where the Finnish General Mannerheim took on the Russian forces, you see. And at that time, Churchill said, Finland has shown how communism rots the soul of a nation, how it makes it abject in peace and proves it base, abominable in war. And Churchill also gave the meaning to what is known as appeasement, when he said, when you make friends with the crocodile, hoping he'll be the last one that he will gobble up. And then, of course, he was very critical of, he was also critical of that time. China had not emerged because China was not a communist nation at that point of time. But you know, this is something which I'm never tired of quoting. When he said, trying to be friends with the communists is like wooing a crocodile. You do not know whether tickle is under his chin, hit it over his head. When it opens his mouth, you're not sure whether it's smiling at you or will gobble you up. See, Nehru was projected by many to be sympathetic to communists or whatever it is, but Nehru, that is not so. Because Nehru developed what is known as the Nehru-Kennedy spirit. And particularly during the Indo-China War of 1962, when the Americans came to our help, it was because of the American, otherwise you would have had the Chinese forces probably marching on the streets of Delhi. You see, and he also was, even in those days, you see, and I am never tired of quoting when it comes to our fighting terrorism, you see. After the bomb blasts in London, I was there in 2005, I went to every tube station and wrote out in the condolence register the words of Churchill. We have no truce or parley with you or the grisly gang that work out your wicked will. You do your worst, we'll do our best, you see. That was Churchill. And Nehru and Churchill, as I mentioned. But who was the greatest lawyer amongst the three? Mahatma Gandhi, Nehru and Sardar Patel. I've written a lot about Sardar Patel. Sardar Patel was the greatest of these three as a lawyer.
Out of all of them.
Out of all of them. And he went to England at a very late age, around the age of 35 or 36, because his brother was Vittal Bhai Patel. And he said, let my brother go first. And the passport had been issued in his name. But in those days, you never had the photograph on the passport. So what happened, Sardar Patel allowed because of the Hindu family tradition. Vittal Bhai Patel went and did his bar, and then Sardar Patel went and did his bar. And Nehru was 14 years younger to him. But then Sardar Patel was the gold medalist, you see. My senior went to inn called the Gray's Inn, you see. And Gandhiji went to the inner temple, you see. Where
Do you endorse what Gandhiji did in terms of partition of India? Jinnah.
See, I'm a great fan of Mahatma Gandhi. I'm very close to his family. And one of his granddaughters who married a Bengali, Tara Di I call her, Tara Bhattacharya. Okay. Very close to me. And I also know Gandhiji's other grandson who's the governor of West Bengal, Gopal Gandhi, who's a great scholar as well. You see, Gandhi was the man of peace. Gandhi, the greatest tributes to Gandhi have been paid by people like Albert Einstein and the great French Nobel laureate Romain Rolland, you see. What a great figure that walked on the face of the earth.
Right.
But there are times when I felt Gandhi, I would not say policy of appeasement, when Gandhi decided to cooperate with the British even during the First World War. And then, of course, during this, hoping that the British would grant India freedom if we support England in the war effort, you see.
Right.
So that happened. To that, the answer came from our great uncle, Subhas Chandra Bose. It's a different dimension to India's freedom struggle. So I'm also very close to his family. And in fact, when his daughter came for the first time to Delhi in 1987, she was a guest of the President of India, who's a dear friend of mine, again, Israel Singh. And then she went to the Republic Day parade with him. You see, Anita Bose, whose mother was Subhas Bose's wife, who was Austrian, as you know. And she was introduced to Subhas Bose in Vienna by an Indian doctor who lived in Vienna. And then Subhas Bose, as you know, launched the Indian National Army in Berlin, and then went by submarine to Singapore in a Japanese submarine. And then there were others, Bengalis, Raj Bihari Bose, who is known as Bose or Nakimura, who married a Japanese girl. You see, the INA. But then I must also tell you that Subhas Bose had a very close association with the Sikhs. The Sikhs helped him to escape Calcutta. When he escaped, the Sikhs helped him to form Sardar Mohan Singh, the Indian National Army, and out of 20,000 soldiers of the Indian National Army, 12,000 were Sikhs. So the Sikhs and Netaji Subhas Bose had a very close connection, you see. And they fought very bravely with them. Tell of what happened, you see. The Japanese lost, and then Subhas Bose could only come up to certain parts of Burma, and then the rest of it, you know. And I don't also agree that he died, but then there is a story of his having died in an air crash, in a Japanese aircraft that took off from Taipei, you see.
True.
So fortunately, I have a good memory, so I remember facts and figures. You see, tell me. Yes.
Lawyer in the Supreme Court, and as
Yeah, I'll tell you about the lawyers, of course.
like extinguished people.
Yes, I'll tell you. I've had the privilege of having worked with the greatest lawyers of this country in my lifetime. See, after Ashok Sen, my second guru was Fali Nariman. I used to call him Uncle Fali, who died only last year, and I spoke about him on television. I wrote about him. In fact, once I asked my senior Ashok Sen, Mama, you are the leader of the Indian Bar. Who will be the leader of the Indian Bar after you? He said, Fali. And then we asked, after Fali, he said, after Fali, there will be no leader of the Indian Bar. Uncle Fali again was one of these great lawyers. And he was the last of the greats. But then there were many others who are no more there. You see, people like Ashok Desai, the Attorney General of India, Mr. Andharjana, who was the Solicitor General of India. And there's so many others, you see, and so many law ministers. But my class friend Arun Jaitley was the law minister, and he studied law with me. He was, in fact, in my class in the law faculty. And he was arrested, in fact, when emergency came. He was arrested in my presence because we were having coffee in the university coffee house. When the police came, and I think Arun was also having an omelette. He was very fond of eating. The police came, arrested him, and then the rest is history. He was only released in 1977 after emergency lifted. So he joined the legal profession a year after I did, because in the year 1976 he was in jail the year I passed out. But then Arun emerged as the leader of the Delhi High Court bar, and then ultimately went on to become the... But there was another great lawyer that I came in touch with, and I would have rated him. I would rate him, at par with people like Ashok Sen and Fali Nariman. It was Mr. Govind Swaminathan, who was the leader of the Madras Bar, and he was the former Advocate General of Madras. He had come from a very distinguished family. He practiced till the age of 93 or so, and he was absolutely the leader of the Madras Bar. His father had, I think, done his doctorate from Harvard at the age of 24. His mother was a member of parliament in Nehru's time from Madras South, which is now that constituency, the member of parliament, my friend Sumati. And two of his sisters, one was Sarabai, who became a very famous dancer, and the other sister was Lakshmi, who became the leader of the Subhas Bose's Ladies' Army, that Rani Jhansi Brigade, you see. So a very distinguished family. And Govind Swaminathan no more. But I remember till the age of 93 or so, he used to practice and Ramrod Street. And he used to live in a palatial house on Harrington Street, I think a 24-acre house. And he had his horses. And if I was to go for a conference, he'd say, let's first go for a ride. He has to carry my breeches with me. And now, later on, he was only left with the outhouse, and his daughter married a Bengali gentleman, whose daughter, Miss Mukherjee, went to the Bangalore Law School. You see. So I had this privilege of having worked with also some of the leaders of the Calcutta Bar. And I would not say there are lawyers of that caliber left anymore in the Supreme Court. And I also must tell you, I had the privilege of meeting some of the greatest lawyers from England, you see. I was very close to Lord Denning. I knew Lord Evershed. I knew Lord Elvingham. They were all master of the rolls, you see. And I met Sir Dinglefoot. I'd also met Sir Michael Foot. And I had a privilege of meeting Lord Denning, particularly, is very fond of me. And when he used to come to India, he used to insist that I accompany him wherever he went. And I used to meet him, and I used to go to England. And if I was there in court, and he is the master of the rolls, he will sort of wink at me. You see, so I mean, even in England, you don't have lawyers of that caliber anymore. You see, and my favorite lawyer, as far as English lawyers are concerned, is a great lawyer called Hartley Shawcross, who was the Attorney General of England during Churchill's time, you see. And he came from Liverpool, you see. And his first case that he handled was a case in which he was asked to defend a parrot. And the parrot was not speaking. So the complaint was that parrot doesn't speak. So ultimately the parrot spoke in court. But he became very famous because he was the main counsel for the British in the Nuremberg trials, you see. He was one of the great lawyers who sort of, went against these Nazi leaders, and many of whom were hanged or put behind the bars, you see. And
so what values anchored you in the courtroom between defeat and victory?
Well, my seniors at least, they said, ultimately, there is nothing a situation like there is no answer in law. And they both believed that you have to win a case. But there are cases in which, at least I don't remember having lost any case ultimately, the Supreme Court. But like Mr. Sen had a phenomenal memory. I mean, my memory is not a fraction of the kind of memory I had. And Mr. Fali Nariman's son is my best friend from the profession, from my generation, who retired as a very eminent judge of the Supreme Court. He also had a phenomenal memory. And what I shared with Rohington Nariman, Uncle Fali's son, was a love for Western classical music. He has the largest collection of Western classical music in Delhi. But there are many other former Chief Justices I've associated with very closely. People like Chief Justice Tira Thakur, Chief Justice Chandra. There are so many others, who've been. But we don't have people of the caliber of Ashok Sen or Fali Nariman. Nariman was the last of the greats. And therefore, two or three things I learned. One, the hard work. You see, I've spoken, I think I shared one of my lectures on you, the do's and don'ts of young legal profession, to work very hard. That's why I said that you went to the stables of Ashok Sen, I whipped you to perfection. So nowadays, lawyers find, a shortcut, they'll have the juniors prepare something, they are not. I've seen Uncle Fali writing out 60, 70 pages by hand, you see, when we used to prepare. And what meticulous preparation. We used to read the laws of different countries like England, the United States, Canada, Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, and then prepare ourselves. You see, the meticulous preparation, hard work. And there is no, as Abraham Lincoln, who is my favorite American personality, I think the greatest American president and the father of modern democracy, and the man who inspired Gandhi and Nehru. There's something which people are not aware of, that Lincoln came into Nehru's life long before Mahatma Gandhi. Because Lincoln was a kind of, role model for Nehru. And even today, if you visit Nehru's old house, you'll find on his table a bronze cast, Abraham Lincoln's right hand, which he brought from his first visit to the United States in 1949. Nehru went thrice, 49, 56, and 61, the last visit, when he brought back that bronze cast. And then in front of his table, you'll find a lithograph of Abraham Lincoln, you see. And at that point of time, his father had a great friend called, Lord Lothian, you see, who was the British ambassador to the United States. And the British ambassador to the United States used to tell Pandit Nehru that emulate Abraham Lincoln. Because he used to tell him that Lincoln is the greatest figure that the democratic world has thrown up. And I think Nehru followed that advice, and Nehru, till the very end, remained a very steadfast devotee of Abraham Lincoln, you see. And as you know, he brought about this whole concept of the Nehru-Kennedy spirit. And you all know what happened in the 1962 war. But for Kennedy's, who was, I think, and what is interesting is that Kennedy and Nehru were close friends, but Kennedy died shortly before Nehru died. And Kennedy died on the 22nd November 1963, and Nehru died on the 27th of May 1964. But what was common between Nehru and Kennedy, and this is something a lot of people are not aware of, was a love for the American poet Robert Frost. And Kennedy, before he died, by that time Robert Frost had died. But Robert Frost was there at Kennedy's inauguration, and that was the first time that a poem dedicated to the President of the United States was read out. It was a Robert Frost poem. And then Kennedy went to the Robert Frost Memorial before he went to Dallas, where he was shot ostensibly by a chap called Lee Harvey Oswald, who shot him from the book depository. Though there is now a controversy as to whether that was the fatal shot or whether that was a shot at all, whether Oswald was the assassin or not. But that's getting into a controversy. There was a Warren Commission report published by Chief Justice Warren after Kennedy died. And Nehru, before he died, Nehru died on the 27th of May, 1964. And before he went to sleep, he wrote on a piece of paper and left it on his bedside table, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep, Robert Frost, you see. And before Nehru died, he had gone for a short holiday with Indira Gandhi to Dehradun. So and before he went to Dehradun, he had his last press conference where the last two questions were, the second last question was, is Indira Gandhi going to become the Prime Minister after you? No comment. And then Nehru was asked that, Mr. Nehru, there has been a split in the Communist Party of India. What is your reaction? To which Pandit Nehru said, what happens to the Communist Party of India is of no concern to me or the people of India. That establishes that deep down he was a Democrat. And like Churchill, of course Churchill was a lifelong opponent of communism. But then it was Indira Gandhi later because of the Nixon days when Nixon went against India and Nixon tried to defend Pakistan and tried to rescue Pakistani soldiers stranded in East, what was then East Pakistan. See, the 7th Fleet was sent, and that's when we sort of developed closer relations, and we had this Treaty of Peace Cooperation with the Russians, Brezhnev's time, you see. So, yeah, you tell me.
So do you think that Nehru really set up the foundation for Indian democracy, in a very strong way? Is that something which you...
Absolutely. I've always believed that Nehru, and in fact, even Mr. Modi, I mean, even on his birthday, on the 27th of May, Mr. Modi showed respect. And Mr. Modi, these are political issues, you see, where question is whether Nehru sacrificed our interests. But I must tell you, and I can tell you with all the conviction at my command, not because I was close to him. I saw Nehru very fleetingly during the days when Ashok Babu was his law minister as a little child. But I can also tell you that I met Mr. Nehru for the first time when I was in Delhi Public School and I was 4 or 5 years old, and President Eisenhower, the American president, was coming. So they had a little party in the American embassy where Nehru had to select one American boy and one Indian boy and an American girl to receive President Eisenhower. So Nehru selected me and an American girl, and we garlanded President Eisenhower when he came down from his aircraft. And then we drove to the Pragati Maidan, which was then the exhibition ground, where they had an American pavilion which Nehru and Eisenhower jointly inaugurated. So that was my first, interaction with an American president. Though we hardly exchanged any, I was a little boy, but I spoke good English because, as I told you, my parents had engaged this English lady, and that's, I think, what impressed Nehru also, that he felt that, I spoke. I still remember at the age of 8 or 9, I was asked to sort of recite my favorite, Tagore poem from Gitanjali, "The Mind is Without Fear," and then I had to do an excerpt from Julius Caesar, Mark Antony's speech. And the British High Commissioner at that time, Sir Paul Gobuth, he told my school principal, Mr. Deen Dayal, who was a great mentor of mine, that I'd like to meet this boy. And he asked me that, where did you learn to speak such good English? I said, you have to blame my English granny for that, because she's the one who taught me to speak right and read English the way a 19th century boy would do. And so this Tagore poem was also our school prayer. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where tireless striving stretches his arms toward perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit, where the mind is led forward by thee into ever-widening thought and action, into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country wake.
So, talking about US presidents and your interaction with them, what's your opinion about the recent tariffs which have been imposed on India?
You see, the relationship between Mr. Modi and Trump has been a very good relationship. And Trump, I would say, is a friend of India, friend of Modi. In fact, prior to his first election, Modi had even said, "Is bar Trump Sarkar." You see, and whether it's a Howdy Modi event or the Motera event, the relationship between Modi and Trump has been good, almost like the relationship of Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt, though they had their differences. But if you look at tariff, Mr. Trump, I think, is a businessman. I don't want to get into this controversy, high tariff, low tariff. Two other events have taken place. The US, one of the secretaries has in fact talked very optimistically, in the sense he has said that it will eventually lead to a good relationship. And you know, on the 25th of this month, an American defense team and an Indian defense team sat together and worked out a 10-year roadmap for enhanced cooperation in the field of defense. And I don't want to get into this controversy. I personally feel Trump is making great efforts to bring about peace in the world. Mr. Modi also feels this is not a time of war. And both are on the same platform insofar as peace. And peace, as you know, the great English poet Milton had said, "Peace hath her victories no less renowned than war." And I have been a champion of peace in my own way. I'm a great devotee of. And India is the land of peace. India is the land of Gautam Buddha, is the land of Guru Nanak, is the land of Mother Teresa, who, as you know, lived in my city by birth, Calcutta. Though she was an Albanian, but she got the Nobel Prize as an Indian citizen and as a citizen of Calcutta. So Buddha, Gandhi again was an apostle of peace. It was his concept of non-violence. But here again, I must tell you, Gandhi's freedom struggle began on African soil, you see, in South Africa. And you know the whole story, how Gandhi was thrown out of the train. And then Gandhi was given a large tract of land by his closest friend, who was a Jew. Kallenbach, you see. Kallenbach was a Jewish architect, you see, who was living in South Africa and who gave Gandhi a very big tract of land on which Gandhiji started his movement. That helped all the African countries later, because after India became independent, all the other African countries, and in those days, we had a General Smuts, who was almost like Reinhard Heydrich in Czechoslovakia, who ruled South Africa with an iron fist and who imprisoned Mahatma Gandhi. And Mahatma Gandhi sent him a pair of sandals which he made with his own hands, you see, which he sent to him. He had the courage to send him a pair of slippers, which ultimately General Smuts acknowledged as a great gift from Gandhi. And as you know, General Smuts was part of Winston Churchill's committee, you see, in England during the war. But Gandhi's, in fact, India's freedom struggle began on African soil. But that is not enough. Gandhi's political journey began in my city, Calcutta, where from South Africa he came with his mentor, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, you see, whom he used to call his guru, Dharma Guru. And he attended the first Congress session, but his desire was to go and meet Swami Vivekananda. So he walked all the way from the venue of the Congress session to Belur Math. But by that time, Vivekananda had taken sick and he was not in a position to meet Mahatma Gandhi. So he came back disillusioned. And second time, he was at a very crucial time in Indian history, when on Independence Day, 1947, 15th of August, Mahatma Gandhi was in Calcutta, in riot-torn Calcutta, where he had gone to heal the wounds of communalism, and where the Hindus were fighting the Muslims, and after the fallout of the great Calcutta killing, as you know. You see.
Yeah. So, given the current geopolitical scenarios and you being an advisor to many in this frame of things,
I am very optimistic. And I feel this tariff war is not to be looked at in isolation. You have to look at the history of Indo-American relations. Incidentally, when George Washington became the first president of the United States, The first consul that he designated was sent to Calcutta. The first American consul came to Calcutta. At that time, Lord Cornwallis was the Governor-General of India, who had lost the Battle of Yorktown and had to come to Calcutta as a punishment posting after the ignominious defeat, you see, in the Battle of Yorktown. So, and that Lord Cornwallis refused to meet the American consul. And then the American devised of another way of breaking the ice. And that is when they started sending ice from Boston by a chap called Mr. Tudor, who had the Tudor Ice Company. The first item American export that came was ice wrapped in pine dust. And the citizens of Calcutta built 2 ice houses to house the American ice. And it's no more there. And then the citizens of Bombay built a similar, which is also no longer there. The only ice house that survives is the one in Madras, where Swami Vivekananda gave a major speech after returning from Chicago. And Swami Vivekananda is somebody, again, he was the messenger of Indian wisdom to the Western world. I'm a great devotee of Swami, apart from the fact that he comes from my city. And I'm a great devotee of Ramakrishna Paramhans also. And you see, and you know that Swami Vivekananda, after Chicago, went to Los Angeles, where he gave a speech on Ramayana, on the Mahabharata. But something which has always impressed me, and which I was one of the lawyers in the Janmabhoomi matter in the Supreme Court, where I appeared for the Sikhs. And I told the Supreme Court that my position is that of the squirrel. And Swami Vivekananda said that I am like the squirrel in the Ramayana and brought those few grains of sand dust to build Rama's bridge. That is my position. That is what Vivekananda said. That is what I told the Supreme Court. And I said, I'm representing the Sikhs, and that's when I told the Supreme Court that Guru Nanak had visited the temple even before Babur invaded India. And before the temple was destroyed. And the Sikhs came out to defend, but there were not so many in number to defend the temple against the fury of Babur's army, you see. But I did not take a communalistic, religious kind of a stand. My stand in the Supreme Court was Babur is an invader has no right. And secondly, I think I took the principles from the United Nations that belligerent occupancy is illegal occupancy. So I went into a purely legal aspect without going into any religious semantics or any communal favors, because when I talked of Rajiv Gandhi, he also played a very big role during that time. Before he died, election campaign, he started from Ayodhya and he had promised Ram Rajya. And he carried the Shilyanas, as you know, and he took the blessings of a saint called Deora Baba, who blessed Rajiv Gandhi with his toe, sitting atop a branch on a tree, you see. So Rajiv Gandhi also had a big role to play in the laying the foundations of the Ram temple, which unfortunately due to political reasons, you see, and he was a noble soul, you see. And what is interesting is, as I mentioned to you, that Rajiv Gandhi wrote his last letter to me. And the letter was posted to me 2 hours before his death, you see.
So, as an established lawyer, what is your advice to people who want to practice law in like Indian geography?
Well, I've spoken about it on many occasions and I've given many lectures on that. 2 or 3 things are very important. One, I think, is hard work. There is no substitute for hard work. See, but unfortunately, I must tell you, and I must tell you without mincing words, that you now have 2 categories of lawyers. Lawyers and fixers. Some of them don't even come to court, but they indulge in what is known as, backroom machinations, or, working behind the scenes, or at least claiming to work behind the scenes. So we now have these 2, and probably these fixers earn at least 10 times more than what pure lawyers like us. Secondly, hard work and, keeping also a sort of strategy where you don't come into conflict. You see, there is also, I must tell you, a growing tendency to attack the judiciary. It's a growing tendency where, a conflict is thought to be created between the bench and the bar. You see, I feel that the bench and the bar must work together in unison, where something like the words of the Upanishads, common be your purpose, united be your goal, perfect be the union amongst us, you see. So the bar and the bench have to work together, not against each other. There has been instances in the past, in the very recent past, where attempts have been made to discourage even the Chief Justice of the country, you see, and leveling all kinds of allegations against them, you see. And sometimes some kind of a campaign of vilification and calumny is also launched against senior members of the bench, you see. Therefore, lawyers must learn to respect the bar, because after all, the lawyers become judges. The judges are not your enemies. But it is your duty. And there is, I remember there was an Attorney General who was for some time the Attorney General when Uncle P.V. was the Prime Minister, Attorney General called G. Ramaswamy. And Mr. G. Ramaswamy had these three cardinal principles, and uproarious, hilarious three principles. He said, convince. If you cannot convince, confuse. If you cannot confuse, corrupt. But today, fortunately, we have a very, very good Attorney General of India. My very dear friend, I'm not saying so because he's close to me, is Mr. R. Venkatramani. A very simple, unassuming kind of a person, but with great power. And recently, he won a major victory in the Delhi High Court against Reliance Industries in a major matter relating to petroleum, where the petroleum minister led the battle. My, again, very close friend from college, Hardeep Singh Puri. He was we elected him as the Prime Minister of my college, Hindu College. So Hardeep and I, we have grown up together. And Hardeep Puri is the Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas. And Mr. Venkatramani brought in now the senior most lawyer of the Supreme Court bar, Mr. Venugopal, who was the former Attorney General, who at the age of, I think, 95 or 96 appeared with him in this. And he's still appearing, but he appears digitally. He didn't appear physically in the court. Naturally, he's a weak man now. So, hard work, respect for the bench. You must learn to respect judges, and you must curb your urge to be dishonest, you see. See, nowadays, when a client goes, or when a lawyer is briefed in a matter, the first question the lawyer is asked, the matter is before such and such court, do you know the judges? Now, this kind of a thing must be arrested, because the legal profession is a very noble profession. It's a profession that has been nurtured by people like Abraham Lincoln, Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Patel. Sardar Patel, gave up everything. At the end of his life, he probably had 300 rupees in his bank, one steel, steel box, maybe a charkha and a few items of clothing, that's all. And he was, during the period 13 to 1917, was earning 50,000 rupees a month in those days, and used to travel to court in a horse carriage, which was similar to the one that the Viceroy of India used to use. So from there, he gave up everything for the cause of the nation. But he was the most distinguished lawyer amongst this trio of Nehru, Gandhi, and Patel. He was the greatest of the great three of our freedom struggle.
Speaking of corruption, there is corruption not only in law,
there
is corruption in medical profession. You go to a hospital, there is so many things happening.
Absolutely.
There. So how do you...
And I will not say this happens only in India. It happens in many other countries
across
also.
the world, yeah. So
But it's a growing trend all over the world, because you feel you can pay money and get the thing done.
Yeah.
So why make an effort? Why queue up in a hospital? Pay somebody and, get a backdoor entry.
To address this, like especially in India?
The corruption is like cancer, like terrorism. It is like cancer. And like cancer, even if you were to sort of cut out a certain portion of the human anatomy, the cancer continues. And there is actually no cure for cancer. I must tell you now the history of corruption in this country. See, Pandit Nehru, at that time, even the defense minister was found to be cozying up to the Chinese, and there was that famous Jeep scandal. So Nehru appointed a committee on corruption under the leadership of the most honest minister, Lal Bahadur Shastri. And in fact, Lal Bahadur was asked that, you are the most honest minister He said, no, I'm not the most honest minister, I'm the least corrupt. So he appointed Dr. Santaram as the chairman of that corruption committee. So Santaram was not a lawyer, he was a mathematician. He wanted a person with an analytical brain. The Santaram Commission gave a report, and by the time the report was published, Nehru had died, and Lal Bahadur Shastri had taken over as the Prime Minister of the country. It was tabled in Parliament by Lal Bahadur Shastri. And we read about it when I was a student of economics in Hindu College. We had a book called Asian Drama by Gunnar Medal, who was a Nobel laureate in economics, where he studied the Santaram Commission. He wrote about corruption in India. And his conclusion, based on the report of the Santaram Commission, was that in India corruption is not there because of the willingness to corrupt, but because of the ability to corrupt. It is your ability to corrupt a person, be it a judge, be it a bureaucrat, be it a police officer. If you have the ability to corrupt a person, corruption comes into the very fabric of our society, not the willingness. I may wish to bribe someone and get something done. No, I must have the ability. And things are being done at the highest level, you see. I don't want to get into names. I don't want to talk about industrialists. I don't want to talk about industrial houses. But in Bengali, we have an expression called Dhua Tulsi, a wash Tulsi. Nobody is a wash Tulsi. It's only a question of degree and not of kind when it comes to corruption.
And since you spoke about the industrialists and the business people, do you think business can be conducted without corruption?
No, certainly not. Certainly not. How do you get a contract from the government? Never. And there have been very, very honest people in business. If you talk of people like the old veterans, people like Jamshedji Tata, and people like J.R.D. Tata, who was also an aviator. He was born in Paris, and he was the French mother. These are people who are people that you can emulate, you see. But nowadays, you can't do business by being honest, just as you can't do politics by being honest, just as you can't be a success as a lawyer today, unless even at the highest level today, I don't want to take names, fixing has become part of the legal profession. Yeah. Not by exception, but as a rule. You cannot succeed unless you are crooked, you see. So I would add to his convince, confuse, corrupt, and I say big crooked. The fourth C I can add, you see. Crookedness, crookery, you see.
So when future generations look back at Anoop Bose, what is the legacy or what is it that you feel that they should think of?
I am very optimistic. I don't think corruption, of course, it is part of our system. It is in our very veins, it's in our very fabric. But I am very optimistic that a day might come when younger generation particularly will realize they need to have certain values and ideals in life. And you cannot, succeed by being clever by half, or by greasing the palms of people, or by being dishonest, you see. Because I must tell you, something that we deal with very, very closely in law is fraud. And as we know, fraud vitiates everything, you see. So, and sometimes, decisions, come when you perpetrate a fraud on the court itself. There are lawyers who mislead courts. There are lawyers who rely on decisions that don't even exist. And there are lawyers who mislead and misrepresent before the court, which is called fraud on the court. It is not fraud on a person. In the realm of law, we lawyers often face the problem where somebody comes with, a forged document or something, and he perpetrates fraud on the court, to which we have a whole series. The first case was argued by senior Ashok said that fraud vitiates everything, you see, and renders everything null and void, you see, and no subsequent act can cure the defect of fraud, you see.
Mr. Bose, you have had a very wide network both in India and abroad,
Yes.
across the world,
Yes.
not only
Yes.
in your fraternity,
Yes.
but
Yes.
also in
Yes.
the political
Yes.
system and otherwise other people progressing in the.
And I would like to mention that I've been very closely related to faith leaders, religious leaders from different, religious communities. See, I've been an advisor to the All India Organized Imams, which is the largest organization of imams in the world. And they have, I think, 7.5 lakh imams, but I was able to get them a salary from the Supreme Court during Narasimha Rao's time. I work very closely with the Jewish community. I work closely with the Rabbi of Delhi, and I work with rabbis from all over the world. And some of the most distinguished people from Calcutta have been Jews, like General Jacob, who was the first Jewish general in an army. And I work with Jews all over the world. I work with Christians. I've been a lawyer for the Catholic Bishop Conference and the Church of North India. I deal with Catholics as well as Protestants. And Christianity came to India immediately after the birth of Christ, was brought to Kerala by St. Thomas the Apostle, you see, and he landed in a Roman port called Muziris, which is in Kerala. And it is from here that Christianity went to Europe and even the Vatican. So Christianity is as much a part of an Indian religion because St. Thomas the Apostle, and then you have heard about St. Xavier, you see, whose embalmed body is in Goa, you see. So, and Islam, Christianity, all the Abraham religions have struck deep roots in India. The Jews in Calcutta, we had huge. Now, of course, you have a very few number of Jews left in Calcutta, but they built some of the most magnificent synagogues and some of the most beautiful buildings in Bombay and Calcutta were built by the Jews. Like we had Sir David Ezra, who was a great builder in Calcutta, and we had Sir David Sassoon, who was a great builder in Bombay. In Bombay, the Parsis also had a big role to play, and the Parsis have produced some of our finest lawyers, you see, like Nani Palkiwala. I had the privilege of working with him, Sori Sorabji, Tempton Andhyarjuna, and my second guru, Fali Nariman, who was the last of the greats, I repeat. After Nariman, there is no leader of the Indian bar, and he was the last of the greats.
So what I want to understand is how do you go about building this amazingly dynamic network that you have across the world?
You see,
if you had to advise somebody to,
If I have to advise somebody, you have to have a spirit of, as we say, victory within yourself, you see. And not a sense of defeatism. It's like in court. You have to go that I'm going to win this matter. And I must tell you that Indira Gandhi's role model was Joan of Arc, the Maid of Lorraine, you see. And you know the story of Joan of Arc. But the message of Joan of Arc, which Indira Gandhi was never tired of telling me, and Joan of Arc said, in truth, there is no defeat except from within. Unless you're beaten there, you're bound to win, you see. So you must have that. And secondly, is the power of the human mind, about which I have also lectured. That incredible power of the human mind, you see, your mind must be a victorious mind. There's the story of Akbar's general Man Singh. He was about to cross a turbulent river, and he was hesitating because the river was turbulent. And the voice of Sant Tulsidas came from the background. He said, Sabhai bhumi gopal ki jame atak kaha, jakai man mein atak hai, soi atak raha. And which means, this world belongs to God. Where is the obstruction? If there be an obstruction, it is only in the mind. So if you remove the cobweb from your mind, then you will succeed. That's the mantra for success. Have power. And also, you must work in tandem with people. You see, you can't, particularly in the legal profession, you see, lawyers are trying to compete with each other, trying to bring people down. This doesn't happen in school and college. There is this sense of professionalism. You do well, and you will always make enemies. If you are a, halfpenny, tuppenny lawyer, you don't make much of a name, then you will not have any enemies. You do well, and you will have enemies. You see. They'll try to bring you down, you see, and disparage you, see. So, therefore, you must learn to appreciate the success of others. You must learn to appreciate the talent of others. You must learn to appreciate the wisdom of others. You must learn to appreciate the legal acumen of others. But now I find, particularly among some of the seniors, think, they are full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. One of the things that you must learn as a lawyer is to be humble. I'm a great lawyer. The Falis and the Ashoks never sort of threw their weight around, you see, and never used to travel in big cars or live in big houses. My senior used to travel in an old Fiat car, you see, which was not even air conditioned in the old days. And then Mr. Nariman used to travel in an old Ambassador car. So much later that, Ashok Mamu decided to buy a Mercedes, which was a 1952 model Mercedes, the same kind of car which the President of India had in those days, you see. He had a Rolls, and he had a Mercedes, which is an antique, which used to come. There was only one senior lawyer on the Supreme Court who had a new Mercedes, and that was Dr. L.M. Singhvi, another very eminent lawyer, a good friend of mine, whose son is Manu Singhvi, who is also a famous lawyer in the Supreme Court, Abhishek Singhvi. So he was the only one who had an orange-colored Mercedes. So there's only one senior in those days in the Supreme Court who had a Mercedes car, and that was Dr. L.M. Singhvi. He used to live in South Extension. Today, if you come with me, Sonali, to the Supreme Court, you'll find every second lawyer is having a Mercedes or a Audi or any of these fancy cars, and most of them are buying their cars by taking loans from banks or paying EMIs. But that's so the element of this showing off, you see, full of sound and fury signifying nothing. So there is no respect for true values. There's a lot of exhibitionism. You see, I ride a big car, I live in a big house. All the top lawyers now live in these posh localities like Johor Bagh and golf links and living in palatial houses. And there's also a tendency now amongst, and this is where I think the Supreme Court bar and bench have to work together, the tendency of taking cash payments, you see. A lot of lawyers, you pay under the table, you see. Say if you're charging 100 rupees, you see, maybe 20 is being paid by check and 80, and you find, and I need not get into things like that, cash has been also found, and I say so without mincing words, that cash has been found in a judge's house, and that matter is now being discussed, and matters also went to Supreme Court. The question is not whether cash was found, or whether it was found in a burnt condition. Question is, where did that cash go? Where did it go? Apparently, it was carried in some ambulances and so on. I don't get into this. There's enough coverage in the press and the media, and I don't want to trample on ground which is sensitive. But as members of the bar and bench, you have a responsibility to society. Whether you're a lawyer or a judge, in the eyes of the public, you cannot be regarded as a dishonest person with very, very low values, you see. You see, avaricious is fine, but lawyers and judges should not be shown to be avaricious. You see.
So with all these various things happening, where do you think India is headed to? What's the future of India?
I'm very optimistic as far as India is concerned. Apart from the fact that we are the largest democracy, largest working democracy in the world, India has a very bright future. And Mr. Modi is also playing a very important role. And his vision of, and I keep saying, Modi could mean magic of developing India. He's serious. He's an honest man. He doesn't have a family to look after. But it is not like Trump's slogan, make America great again. India is already great. You must realize one thing, that we've been through hundreds of years of slavery. The Muslims, the British, the Portuguese, the French, they've all colonized India, or portions of India. It was only in 1947 that, we had freedom at midnight, you see. But before that, we were, I would say, an oppressed, suppressed, depressed and repressed nation.
Fantastic. So what are your last thoughts or message to the viewers in terms of getting the best out of life, no matter where you are in the world?
I will again bring back Tagore, where tireless striving stretches his arms towards perfection, and into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake.
All right, friends, so that was Mr. Anoop Bose, who believes in the spirit of victory and, of course, to the bright future.
When it comes to spirit, I'll just add, since I'm also a great fan of Winston Churchill.
Sure.
Victory at all cost, victory in spite of all terror, victory however hard and long the road may be, for without victory, there is no success.
I think so. We need to focus on victory and always be positive that we are walking towards it. So thank you so much, and stay tuned for our next program.